Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Tech with Ankush again. So currently I'm covering this module deploy and manage Azure compute resources. So today I will cover the theory part for configure Azure App Service. So let me start. So what is Azure App Service? Azure App Service is the cloud service from Microsoft Azure that helps you build, deploy and run web applications without worrying about servers. Means Azure App Service, we can say it's the cloud service from Microsoft Azure where we can that help us to build, deploy and run web applications. Here we don't need to manage virtual machines, operating system or infrastructure because Azure does everything for us. And we can use Azure App Service to create websites, mobile app backends, web APIs, and we can run app on Windows machine or Linux machine, and it can automatically scale when more users visit our app. Then programming language supported. So here Azure App Service supports popular language out of box called quick starts like ASP.NET, Java. In simple words, I can say it supports all the languages. Benefits of Azure App Service: multiple language and framework. Like we can build apps using many languages. Like web app, we can use ASP.NET, Java, background jobs using PowerShell or scripts. Then DevOps optimization, like Azure App Service works smoothly with Azure DevOps, GitHub, Bitbucket, Docker Hub, Azure Container Registry, etc. Then global scale and high availability. Like we can scale up, like if there is, we can make the machine bigger, or we can scale out, like we can add more instances. Azure runs our app in Microsoft Global Data Center, so user gets fast access worldwide. Azure also provides an SLA, like uptime guarantee. Security and compliance. Azure App Services ISO, SOC, PCI compliant, like it follows the industry standards. Then application templates. We can deploy ready-made apps from Azure Market Space like WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, etc. Visual Studio integration, like we can use Visual Studio to create apps, deploy directly to Azure, debug issues easily. API and mobile app features like Azure App Service supports CORS for APIs, mobile authentication, offline data synchronization, push notifications. Now, basic configuration settings, like when we create an app in Microsoft Azure, Azure has some basic details. These settings define how and where our app runs. Like name. So it means like the unique name of our app. And Azure use it to create a default URL. Like this is the name of my application, like web app CES1, and this is the complete is the URL. Then publish, like we can publish our app in two ways. One is code, like normally app files, and it is used for by beginners. Then Docker container, like app packaged inside a container, like my application, it will run inside a container. Then runtime stack. The runtime stack tells Azure which programming language, which version to use. Then operating system, like we choose the operating system on which our app runs, like Windows, Linux, region, like the region in the Azure data center location where our app runs, like Central India. Like we will select the region. Then pricing plan, like which app service plan I am using, and it decides CPU and memory, scaling ability, cost. Then continuous integration and deployment. Continuous integration and deployment is a way to automatically update our website or app whenever we change our code. So let us assume currently this is my application is running. Now the developer adds the another code, so it will automatically get deployed to my app, and there is no downtime. So this is CI/CD. Then deployment options in Azure App Service, like when creating a web app, we choose how to deploy code. These options are available in the deployment center. There are two main types. One is CI/CD, which is continuous deployment. This is the most popular and recommended method. How it works? We push the code to the repository. Repository means online storage. Azure detects the change and Azure automatically deploys it. Means we simply, if we add the is like let us assume the developer add the code. It will add the code to the Azure Container Registry (ACR), or it is also known as repository. Then Azure automatically detects the new code and it will automatically add the code to the current running application. Then it also supports sources like GitHub. Connect our GitHub repository. Any change to the production main branches deployed automatically. Then we can use Bitbucket similar to GitHub, automatically deployment on code push. Then local Git, Azure provides a Git URL. We push code directly to Azure. Azure repositories, part of Azure DevOps, greater for enterprise project, strong version control and pipelines. So here, source, like from where we will get the code. So in continuous deployment, it has GitHub, this local Git, Azure, and in manual, we can use external Git, OneDrive, Dropbox. Okay. So this is so under deployment center, we will check whether we will decide like from where the Microsoft Azure gets the code. Advanced CI/CD with Azure DevOps. Like with Azure DevOps, we can compile our code, run automatic test, build packages, deploy only if everything succeeded. Then this is the manual deployment. In manual deployment means we decide when to upload code. And manual deployment options like remote Git, Azure gives you a Git URL. We push code manually to deploy. Then OneDrive, upload files from OneDrive, Azure syncs them to our application. Dropbox, upload files using Dropbox, and Azure pulls them into your app. So in manual deployment, we push the code. In continuous, Azure automatically pull the code. What are deployment slots? In Azure App Service, deployment slot is a separate copy of our app that runs alongside our main production app. So these are the deployment slots here. So now key things to know about deployment slots. Deployment slots are live apps. Each slot run our app has its own URL. Pricing tier requirement. Deployment slots are not available in free or basic plans. Like in free and basic plans, this deployment slot option is not available. They are only available in standard, premium, and isolated. Slot swapping. We can swap app code, app configuration. So what are deployment slots actually? Deployment slot, let us assume, whenever we create the code and add to the app service plan, then or we can say on the app, whenever we have the code, we will use the deployment slots. In deployment slots, there is one production slot and the other is staging slot. So whenever we add the code, it will get add to the staging slot, and once the code will be verified like the application is working good, then we will directly push it to the production. Or if we are using the automatic option, then Azure automatically picks the code and transfer it to the production. And whenever we add new code, it will first go to the staging slot, then it will get added to the production by itself, or we can do manual. Then how deployment slots work? Deploy new version to staging slot. So we will the new version will be transferred to staging slot. Test the app safely, like we will test the app, then swap staging and production. Like this slot will get swapped. User sees the new version without downtime. So we can say this staging slot, it's like the testing environment for the web application, and this production means this is the live environment for the web application, means it's in under the production. Why use deployment slots? Validate before going live. Like we can test new features, check configuration, verify performance. Then zero downtime deployment. Like Azure warms up all instances first. Traffic switches seamlessly, no broken request. Then easy rollback. Like after swapping, all production app moves to the other slot. If something goes wrong, just swap again. You are instantly back to the previous working version. Means let us assume this is our staging slot, and this is the production slot. So here the application is running. So let us assume we have added the new code. Now it will do the swap, like this will become the production, and this code will become like this code will get added to the different slot. Okay, so here. So now if there is something wrong with this code in the new one, so Azure automatically use the old slot and make it as a production slot. So this way there is no downtime, or we can say easy rollback. Then auto swap automatically moves our app to production when deployment completes. How it works? We deploy code to a slot, Azure warms up the app, Azure automatically swaps to production. Auto swap is not supported for web apps on Linux. Creating new deployment slot. When we create a slot, Azure give us two choices, like empty slot starts with no app code, we deploy everything from scratch. Clone from another slot, like copies configuration from production another slot. So even though the configuration is cloned, we can still edit it later. Then deployment slot configuration categories. Deployment slot settings are grouped into three main categories. One, slot specific app settings and connection strings. Like some settings stay only in that slot and useful for different databases, different secrets. Continuous deployment settings, like applies when CI/CD is enabled. Each slot can deploy from different branch, user, different pipeline. App service authentication settings. Authentication can be enabled per slot, configured differently. Swapped versus slot specific settings. When we swap slots, not everything moves. Settings that are swapped, these settings move during the slots of swap. Like whenever we do the swap, these settings will get moved. Like language stack and version, 32-bit, 64-bit settings, app settings, connection strings, mounted storage accounts, public certificates, web job content, path mappings. Settings that are slot specific means these settings do not move or swap. So custom domain names, TLS, SSL certificates, non-public, scale settings, always on, IP restrictions, diagnose settings, CORS, virtual network integration, manage identities. Secure our app service app. Azure App Service includes built-in authentication and authorization. So we can secure our app without writing complex security code. Then authorization options, we can choose how strict security should be, like allow anonymous request, like flexible mode, anyone can access our app. Authentication is optional. Identity info is passed in HTTP headers if user logged in. Only allow authenticated requests. This is the strict mode. Anonymous users are blocked. Users are redirected to auth login and the provider. Mobile app gets 1401 unauthorized. Logging and tracing. App service provides built-in logs for authentication and authorization. View authorization traces in application logs. Enable failed request tracing. Look for easy auth module 64 means we can track and we can get all the logs, like who is accessing our application, about the authentication, everything. Now custom domains. When we create web app in app service, Microsoft Azure gives it default web address like this one. So like this is the app name, so it should be like Contoso Azure Web Services.net. So this works fine for testing, but for real, we usually want our own domain name. So what is a custom domain? Custom domain is like our domain, which we will add it to the Azure or to the Azure app. So like default domain is like this one, Azure Websites.net. So our custom domain will be contoso.com. And steps to configure a custom domain. There are three main steps to connect our custom domain to our Azure App Service app. First, buy a domain. Like we have to first purchase the domain. Like we can directly purchase the domain from Azure portal, or we can say we can get the domain from GoDaddy, anywhere. Then we create DNS records. DNS, we can say domain name system connects our domain name to our Azure app. So for Azure App Service, we can use either A records, maps a domain like to directly IP address, then CNAME, but like we can map a domain with another domain, like this is our contoso.com, so I can add it to another domain like contoso.azurewebservices.net, and automatically works even if IP changes. User still see www.contoso.com in their browser. Enable the custom domain in Azure. After DNS is configured, we go to App Service in Azure portal. We open custom domains, validate the domain, and add it to our app. And we test the domain before publishing. Azure confirms ownership. Our app now works with the custom domain. Like we will add our domain to the app service. And custom domain requires a paid app service plan. Like in free, we can't configure. Backup and restore our app service. Azure App Service provides a built-in backup and restore feature that help us to protect our app from data loss. Like Microsoft Azure provides the built-in feature, like if there is something wrong with our application, we can protect our data. What does the backup and restore feature do? The backup and restore feature allow us to save a snapshot of our app at a point in a time. And if we have the snapshot of our application, we can create the image and then we will run the application. Restore over the same app, overwrite or into the app service app. The backup page in the Azure portal shows all backups, their status. Like in the backup page, we will see the backup. What gets backed up? Azure App Service can back up app configuration settings, file content like our app files, connected databases like Azure SQL or Azure database for MySQL, PostgreSQL, MySQL in app. So here, if we have to do the backup or if we have to check the backup, we can check on like if this is my app and in under backups, I can check my backup. So these are the backups. This is custom. This is automatic. So this get failed, this is succeeded. And these are the automatic backups. How backups are stored? Like backups are each backup is saved in our Azure account as zip file, contains app and database data. XML file describes what inside the zip. Backup types like manual backup, we can start them manually and useful before major changings or app update. Schedule backups like run automatically like daily, weekly, we can select and can be stored for a fixed time or indefinitely. Full versus partial backup, like we can in real world we use full backup. So in full backup, it includes all app files, all configuration, all connected database. So when restoring, existing app content is fully replaced, files not in the backup are deleted. Partial backup, like we choose which folder file to include, which to exclude. When restoring, excluded file folders remains unchanged. Then backup limits and visibility. Maximum backup size is 10 GB. Backups are visible in App Service Backups storage account containers. And use Azure Application Insight. So Azure Application Insight is like a monitoring tool in Microsoft Azure that help us see how our application is performing in real time. It's a part of Azure Monitor, works perfectly with Azure App Service. And feature like Insights, platform supported application Insights work with .NET, Java, works for hosted app in Azure, on-prem, everywhere. DevOps and tools like tool integration, it can integrate with Azure Pipeline, Visual Studio. And what should you monitor? Request and response time, like how many requests our app receives, how fast our app responds, how often requests fail. Dependencies like external services, database, API, like we can visualize all these things or we can see all these things. Exceptions like errors, server side errors, browser side errors, full stack traces. Then page views and load performance, which page user visit most, how long pages take to load. Then users and sessions, number of active users, number of sessions. Performance counters like monitor system resources like CPU usage, memory usage, network usage. Host diagnostic, like collect diagnostic from Docker containers, Azure infrastructure, diagnose trace logs like app logs linked to request helps correlate errors with user action, custom events, and metrics. We can track business events such as number of items sold, number of games won, successful payments. So in insights, we can, or in like Azure Monitor and Insights, we can see everything. Okay. So that's all for today. In the next video, I will cover the lab part for Azure App Service. Thank you and have a nice day.